Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent positional game to share with you. This is a rapid game from 2022 between Ding Liren on the white end and Dmitry Andreikin. Time controls 15+10. We have an open Sicilian Taimanov. Okay, these knights are exchanged. In the process, white has strengthened black's control over the center. d5, when played, is now well supported by two pawns. Let's see how white handles this trio. Castles, knight f6. Nope. White's not in a rush just yet to play e5, attacking the knight. Black could respond and apply pressure to an unprotected pawn. White has to react to that threat. First, it's the centralization. Now with the 9 e5, in the event of knight d7, fine. e5 is supported. We don't have to respond right away. White is sort of waiting for a certain move here by black before playing this advance. What move is that? Well, the development of this dark square bishop. It goes to e7 on this move 9. g7 is now unprotected. This is where white goes in for e5, knight d7. Don't have to react to this threat. White can now go on the offensive, targeting the weakened g7 pawn. Now, how do you react to this? In the game, it's g6. The other option is king f8. With g6, you do create two holes on f6 and h6. King f8, of course, you're uncastled. The move not to play is castles here, because bishop h6 is there, and how are you defending the mate threat on g7? You'd have to play g6 and allow the rook to be captured. So in this game, it's g6. Black plays with the two weaknesses. White takes advantage of one of them right away, says no castling for you. Rook b8. And now let me throw this position to you as a pop quiz. How would you respond to this pressure on b2? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the best move here, move played in the game, knight d1. Why is the knight retreating to defend b2? Well, in order to make sense of this, let's consider a different 13th move. For instance, rook b1 or b3. I'll put on b3 to illustrate. After b3, there's rook b4, and what are we doing about this pressure? The queen likes rank 4, do know. She likes the g4 square. Doesn't really want to have to retreat. Well, in this position, if she doesn't want to have to retreat, you'd have to play f4. And do you really want to play in this way? There is an open diagonal now towards the king. Couple pieces, maybe at some stage, can take advantage of this. What's the difference between these two moves? Black continues in this game with bishop f8. But if we're to revisit rook b4 here, with the knight on d1, hang on, the queen can stay put. We don't have to weaken our king position. The new move that is available with the knight on d1 is c4. This is a best move in response to rook b4. White is okay being in a pin. In the event of a capture on c4, multiple ways to reinforce the c4 point if black's applying more pressure. No problems. Okay. Also, one last detail here. If you're looking to commit a game like this to memory, key in on this one piece here. Pay special attention to its path in this game. So far, 2 steps for this guy. Okay, in this game we continue with bishop f8, trying to get rid of this irritating dark square bishop. White says not so fast. White's not so quick to initiate the exchange and invite the king to this safe ground on g7. That would be a nice square to get to. c5, we got a pawn duo. Sure enough, it's challenged right away. This should really be the first move that crosses your mind as soon as your opponent has that pawn duo. Usually best to challenge it as soon as possible. c4 is best. d4. This is a connected passed pawn, but it is blockaded. This is always a super invasive pawn, an alpha 0 pawn in the position, queen still on board. A lot of stuff here. This is a super valuable pawn if we're stripped down to a king and pawn ending, but we are a long ways away from that. From here it is f3. This knight now has a square, f2 is available. Black continues here with queen c7. The computer suggestion is to initiate this exchange and then try to extract the queen like this, getting rid of the queen on the h6 square. Black actually goes for this plan in this game, but a little bit later. So ends up losing time in short in this game with first playing queen c7 and then going back home. All right, we continue here with rook e2. This guy needs some defense before the knight can pivot on f2. Note also the way in which white is choosing to defend b2. You could see maybe a lot of players go with b3, saying, I just want to have a pawn defend the pawn. Why allocate a piece to defending b2? Well, do know if you're putting this pawn on b3, you are essentially saying, I'm okay allowing black to create an open file on the queen side one day with a5, a4. White would prefer to keep the queen side closed as much as possible and play on the side of the board where white is strong. The king side, to be sure. This is where white has space. Okay, so it is rook e2 here. Bishop b7. Now we're ready to go with the knight. Continues to travel. Bishop on c6 now out of the way of the rook. Knight g4. A really nice square for the knight. It's not technically a hole, but pretty much given this position here, it is a hole. I mean, the two pawns that could potentially challenge the knight, this guy's blockaded, and this pawn, if it moves, we always can capture en passant. A really strong post for the knight, to be sure. It does, after all, eye up these two weaknesses. It coordinates really well with his e5 pawn. In a way, white is saying with knight g4, I value my knight more than your bishop. If this knight went to the central square e4, it would be snapped off in a heartbeat. The knight would be way too good on the e4 square. So he keeps the knight on in this game. Knight g4 it is. a5, white activates the last piece. Now black goes in for this idea. h4, poison pawn. Queen takes h, there's knight f6 check, queen's a goner, next move. Dark square bishop exchange, more pressure on g6. This guy's pinned. h7 pawn is pinned, so white is ready to take twice on g6. Black gives up at this point, has an eye on doing something along the g file. The knight hops into f6 with check. This is the end of the knight journey, by the way, so just mapping out the knight's path in this game. King goes uncastled. f4. He's running for his life, the black king. So let's open up the position as quickly as possible. Let these guys spring to life. f5 nearby for team white. Queen f8. Definitely keeping the queens on. We're trying to get at this king. Queen g7 turns out to be a losing move. Best try here for black is considered king c7. In response to king c7, if white now goes in for this pawn break f5, black has a good response. Would have a good response with knight takes knight, and then an only move, e5, ensuring the f file does not open up. Black's in a spot to meet rook takes e with rook takes b. And all of a sudden, in a position like that, I would actually prefer, even though it's saying it's an equal position, I prefer black. Coordination on g2. This pawn is still super valuable. Okay. Black plays queen g7. Now we have f5. Knight takes knight. Pawn takes knight. Note in this position, there's no time to play e5. There's a threat against the queen. She goes to g3 here. The alternative, queen takes pawn, no good, because white can take on e6. The white rooks both spring to life. Black's try is this counterattack against the bishop. White doesn't have to react to this, however. He has calculated it's okay to give up the bishop. He's going after the king at this stage. There's no coordination here between the rooks. He swipes the f-pawn, gives up the bishop, going right after the king, knocking out the e-pawn. We're on the bishop now. No fear of any perpetuals. We have this square covered. What do you do with this guy? Goes to d7. There goes the c-pawn with check, and the a-pawn with check. Another check, and some time can be taken out for this quiet move. Rook e5. Getting in position for an eventual rook c5 check. For instance, queen e7 with rook c5, or even queen a5 with rook c5 to follow. Black's try here, queen g3. Maybe in some cases the queen is covering an important square here after the rook moves, but she can't be maintained here. White continues with rook f3, so now there's even ideas of flushing the king towards the queen side. Maybe a rook a3 to deliver mate is now in the air with this rook lift. Why not give this queen a kick? Black continues with rook takes. Queen takes rook in this position. If some other move is tried, let's say queen g4. Here's a mating attack from here just to illustrate. There's going to be mate shortly. Let's say king here. In both cases, the queen could go here, and we're going to have mate. And just like this. All right, Black's try on this move 36 is to give up the queen. Ends up checking with the rook. King stays on rank 1. So that rook takes b2, the move played in the game, is now not hitting with check. Queen a5 check, king c8, and just one more move here, rook c5, and black resigns. It's going to be mate soon enough from here. Wherever the king goes, doesn't matter. Queen c7 check next, and rook a5 will be mate. So let's just see what this looks like. There we go. That would be the mate in 2 after a king move in this position. So what did you think of this one? Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.